Have you seen me reach for that?
So it's usually I walk around. It's really cramped up here, so I can't move around too much. But it's an honor to actually be the opening act for this circus that will be today. It's a lot of fun. All the speakers kind of got together, and so we didn't overlap too much. So we're all trying to cover a little bit different stuff. So really, we all looked for a different take on what's going on. And really, my niche was kind of the student and personal interactions that everybody's had. I've been a part of the bookend. I'm actually, it's kind of neat, you'll hear the story. I'm part of the bookends, pretty close, of Ken's career at Cornell. And really, it's about how Ken connected with people. I reached out when I was asked to do this to our company. We actually recruited a fair number from Cornell, and I was deluged with pictures. And it wasn't even like, I have to go home and get the picture. It was like, oh yeah, it's on my phone. People carried around these pictures for like 20 years. It was just amazing. I was just flooded with pictures of people. And you're gonna hear, Ken has to tell the pie plate story. I am not capable of telling the clock story. That is one. So where did it start? Where did my time? My time started in the last century. It really starts with Cornell. You know, don't laugh. All the cool kids looked like that then. And Ken had recently started, right? It wasn't that long that Dr. Hover had been there. And I was a new, freshly minted student and all that, and got to know, and we'll get deeper into all these. And then the next real interaction came when I had to decide where to go to grad school. And it was pretty amazing because I can remember Ken said to me, he said, well, we'd like you to stay here, but if you don't stay here, go to Texas and work with Ramon, who you heard last night recently passed away. That was pretty sad for me. So I ended up going to Texas with an endorsement. Then once from Texas, I went to a consulting firm for a bit, and then I wanted to go into contracting. Again, reached out to the faculty network and, oh, I know this guy. Why don't you give him a call? And he didn't tell me exactly who the guy was. So here this little 5-year out of school kid cold calls the CEO of the biggest vertical construction company in Boston. Hey, how you doing? Ken said to call you. I didn't get a job with him because it wasn't the right fit, but he ended up getting me the right place. But that was pretty intimidating to cold call them. Then it kept going through, and when Ken, you'll hear about the ACI President Interaction Influence Curve. I was there at the peak of the curve. He kind of got me into kind of seeing some of these inner workings of ACI. And then since then, I'll show you how it ends up bookending the whole story. So my time started with CE 595, construction management, taught by Ken Hover, who had come out of industry, he had come out of construction, right? He knew this stuff. And at the time, the TA was Ray Cook. And I don't know if you know, Ray Cook had also come out of construction, right? These are two powerhouses. So reality, they were the dynamic duo of construction management, right? You could not have asked for a better class for construction. Your legs are looking good there. So we go into this class, the magic started when we get into this class. We learned about the trades. No one had ever told us about that before in engineering school. We didn't know anything about the trades and cement masons and finishers. And then he talked about money. And nobody had ever talked about money before in school, so that was a little scary. And he talked about schedule, and nobody had ever talked about schedule in our classes before, so that was a little scary. But the best is he talked about Eugene, and you're going to hear lots of stories about Eugene. If you haven't heard about Eugene, Eugene is to construction what the coyote is to the roadrunner, right? If this person really exists, he should have died like 3 or 4 times, because it was always things about Eugene and the shenanigans that he got into. But there was more than that. We actually did learn a lot. We started with specifications, and we learned a ton. And you're going to hear later on from Jim about the teaching style and kind of how do you teach somebody about specifications, because we didn't know about concrete or how to build a building at the time. So how can you learn about specifications if you don't know what you're talking about? So Ken and Ray had us write a specification for a pizza. And you would be amazed. We had people with pizzas that weren't the right shape, that we forgot to cook them, they didn't have cheese, like all this stuff. But you'll use this analogy, right? We use this piece of using something you know to learn something new. Just a really neat way of learning about specifications. Oh yeah, we had uncooked, no cheese, overcooked, giant, small. Like no, we didn't. You don't think about how important a specification is until you open that box of disappointment. So then this class keeps going, and what we got to do is play contractor for a capstone project. So we got documents. We were provided with anonymized documents from a local, smallish project. It was in this case, it was a little health clinic. And the companies, we would form little 4 or 5 person companies within the class that would have to do takeoffs and pricing, and it culminated in this bid night, and we'll get to bid night. But the amount of effort now that I understand, having lived in the construction world, to put this together was incredible. Like what had to come together. But the fun part, but there's always, it's with these classes, it's all about the stories. So we all get this set of anonymized drawings. Then there was one nameless, we'll keep the team nameless, gets out the yellow pages, and we jump in my truck, we jump in the person's truck, and we start driving around to all the clinics in the region, and we find the place that it is. We go in and we talk our way into the clinic and get a tour, a full-blown tour of the clinic. So we're thinking we're all smart. The next session, the next lecture, we come in, and this big lecture hall, there's all these people, and we're right there, and we get this. If any teams might think about going out and finding the actual space, we'd like to discourage that because no team should be going out there because these people have a job to do. So like talking to the whole world and just staring right at us as we did it. Yeah, so we found the place and did it. It was an absolute riot. But then it comes down to bid night, and this is when the class got magic. We all had to have an office, and it had to be on campus because people were actually wrecking their cars and getting in accidents trying to rush to turn in the bids at the end of the night. And it was all set up that all your friends, you had people calling us. You had to set up a bid, and we'd be getting, our phone would ring, and it would be like, well, I'll give you the pine trees, but not the deciduous trees. And people would be like, well, I can do, I'll do the cabinets, but not the doors. So we're all scrambling, getting our bids together. And you even had a person calling us trying to sell x-ray machines when the bid documents specifically excluded x-ray machines, right? How the work that went into this was amazing. And what was neat was it started off as a game, right? At about 7 o'clock that night, it was a game, ho, we're playing contractor. Sometime during that bid process, it turned real. And it was just a transformation. And what we learned about the pressure and the way that the organized chaos of this of the construction world was just amazing. Yeah, that was us. That was our war room down in the basement of Hollister Hall. Just amazing. So then it kept going with CE 675, concrete materials, right? This was, I still have my notes. I lost my notes for the 595 in a flood. I still have the notes. And this is before PowerPoint. This is back, overhead projectors. The information density in these notes is amazing. It's like if you ever open a set of blueprints from like 1885, right? When they can build a bridge from 8 pages of documents, that's what these notes were like. It's just incredible. Jim's going to talk more about this kind of this style and the sketches and the drawing, what you can convey in a small set of sketches. Just like it's still on my shelf. And at the time, if you look, he made us go down to Noman Copy, and for the unheard of sum of $3.42, we had to buy the class notes. But little did we know that what it actually was is he was like your neighborhood corner drug dealer for concrete. Because, right, the first one's free, and then what happens? Well, there's optional books. Uh-oh, these keep going. I'm in, from 342, I'm in for over $1,000 now in what you got me hooked on. So that's my credit card. Thanks you too. Nice little plug there for Michelle. So after that, I'll keep going with my story. We're running, we're running pretty well on time. So after this, like I said, Ken ended up pointing me towards University of Texas, which had one of the top material centers. Nobody was doing materials at that time. It was Cornell, it was Texas, a little bit at Urbana, but so I went down with Ramon Carrasquillo and Dave Fowler. And then after that, I stayed in touch, as he does with all his students. Stayed in touch, got industry connections, got that advice to cold call the CEO of a construction company, all that. So we stayed through it, and it actually kind of grew. We swapped photographs, and I can, we got this. I have this classic photograph. It's Water from Ken Hover is the file name in my computer. And everybody, if you've lived through the lecture, you learn that you put a file on a folder that says cool pictures for presentation. Then you just save everything because you end up using them. And we swap back, pictures and stories going back and forth. And I remember sending you this picture for construction. And I could picture you saying, now everybody, are you sure you know how much work that bolt is doing in this jet? This splice is like 6 feet tall. So we just stayed in touch and really, really kept going through it. And after that, then the NEAT kind of evolved again. And I think it was through your secret intervention where I got kind of introduced to the operational side of ACI. This is at the peak of the ACI presidential influence curve that you have. And really got to serve on committees and met a lot of really good people. You've introduced to a lot of good people. It was just kind of a neat story, just a different phase. And then it kept going, and Ken introduced us. He worked as our connection to Cornell for recruiting students and looking at that. We got co-op referrals, and then kind of making us both feel old. We kind of bookend when there was he turned into a peer. And there was a relative of mine who he had as a student and then as a grader. And if you look kind of on that leftmost person at the height of COVID, it was actually my daughter. So Ken ended up she was a grader and took his class. And I still don't know what grade she got in the class because he wouldn't tell me and I never asked. So I still don't know how she did, but she did enough to do, but that turned out it made kind of both of us feel a little bit old. So just to wrap it up, as we're going kind of rapid fire through this, it really all comes back to people and the relationships that he has. Working and knowing Ken is something that's never dull, and it's something that nobody ever forgets. It's never dull, and it's always fun. So thank you very much.